Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And as always, we are live on 97.3 ESPN YouTube channel as well as Twitter. Glad to have you guys on board the show today. Eagles training camp updates. We are going to get to that. Also, the Phillies are in action tonight. And the Sixers made a transaction, and honestly, I have no idea what the Sixers are doing. I'm going to be completely frank with you. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know if they know what they're doing. Because while the Los Angeles Lakers are collecting Pokemon, I mean free agents from all over the league, the Sixers have re-signed Korkmaz and they've added Andre Drummond. So we're going to have Kevin McCormick join the show because maybe Kevin McCormick can help me understand what exactly the 76ers are doing. Because as I wrote over at 973ESPN.com, the 973 ESPN mobile app, adding Andre Drummond is not an upgrade. And every person on social media that I see disagreeing with me apparently has not read the article because people only react to a title. So no one has been able to explain to me exactly how this is an upgrade. How is this an improvement? I have no idea. I have zero clue. So we'll have Kevin McCormick join us coming up at 6:20 tonight. Text board is open as always, 609-403-0973 to get on the conversation. Also, you can shoot us a message to the 973 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. But we got to start with the Eagles because it's becoming abundantly clear that the left tackle job is going to Jordan Mailata. Now, we've only been at camp for 7 days at this point, but it's becoming more and more obvious that this organization, left tackle, is going to be the football equivalent of Joel Embiid. Jordan Mailata and Joel Embiid, over a decade ago, neither one of them were in any form playing the sports that they are now. Joel Embiid was not playing basketball, and Mailata was not playing American football. They are both from another country, but yet both of them are so phenomenally athletically talented that they were able to pick up sports and then go out there and be successful. Jordan Mailata, if he keeps playing the way he does, has got to be the most successful acquisition of the Howie Roseman era. If this works out the way it's looking like, the Howie Roseman haters all have to get together and at least give the guy credit for finding this dude. Someone who was never supposed to be drafted. Someone who was supposed to be an undrafted free agent tryout player. They drafted him. They stashed him away for a year. They trained him. And then he was forced into action last year. And he still played better than half the league. You know, half the league whose players are all playing football their entire life. And Jordan Mailata has a chance to be a starting caliber for a decade left tackle. And by the way, let's not discount the fact that the Eagles told Mailata, you need to lose 25 pounds, bro. You're a little too big. Okay? The size is hindering you. You could be even more mobile. What did he do? He lost that 25 pounds. So now you have a guy who basically looks like a less muscle-bound version of Brock Lesnar out there playing left tackle. It's insane. And I can't believe that the Eagles found this guy. Like, these are stories that usually happen to other teams. It's usually other teams are the team that finds the guy that nobody ever heard of, okay? The Rams, they found Kurt Warner. Eagles didn't find Kurt Warner. They didn't discover him. When it comes to sports, the Philly teams are not usually the team that finds the nobody, okay? The Mets, they discovered R.A. Dickey and revived his career. He became a Cy Young Award winner. Josh Hamilton went to drug rehab and revived his career with the Rangers. That didn't happen in Philadelphia. The last time Philadelphia found an athlete was Vince Papale. That was it. Philly sports teams don't find the random star. The Celtics found 5'8" Isaiah Thomas. I can keep going on and on. Every wild sports story, okay? Jim Morris, the pitcher for the Rays years ago. Philly doesn't find a success story. Even the story of Matt Caesar from South Jersey didn't go through the Phillies organization with the Cubs, of all teams. Wins a World Series with the Cubs. Didn't come through Philadelphia. It is absolutely mind-blowing to me that we actually have our own story. That Philadelphia's got a guy that we found, that this organization found. And it wasn't Daryl Morey and Elton Brand. It wasn't Matt Klentak or Dave Dombrowski. It wasn't Chuck Fletcher and the Flyers. No, it was Howie Roseman. Which makes it even more ironic. Because it ends up being Howie is the guy that finds this dude. His front office. His scouting staff. And you know what? I'm excited because I don't know how many games this team is going to win. I've said multiple times, I think this Eagles team is a 7-8 win team. I don't think they win the division. But at least we know we have a left tackle. At least we know that you went in there with a competition and it looks like left tackle's in good hands. Because according to all reports coming out of camp, Jordan Mailata is outplaying Andre Dillard immensely. And by the way, Andre Dillard's getting whipped by Josh Sweat. Josh Sweat looks like the best defensive player in camp. And Andre Dillard looks like the best offensive lineman in camp. It's going to be an interesting season. Because you could go into camp, from out of camp into the regular season, with a left tackle who never played high school or college football. And he could end up being your starting left tackle for the next decade. I mean, that's just wild to me. Josh Hennig here, Game Night on 973 ESPN. Text board is open as always at 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. You also could jump on the 973 ESPN mobile app. Of course, it's free. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. You can shoot all the shows a message during the show right there at the 973 ESPN mobile app. And if you would have had the 973 ESPN mobile app, which is free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City, you would download it on the Google Play and Apple stores. You would have been able to read what apparently is turning into the most controversial story of the day. And yours truly wrote it. Andre Drummond signed with the Sixers 17 hours after Dwight Howard said, I'm out of town. I'm going back to Los Angeles for the third time to play for the Lakers. I mean, Dwight must really love the Lakers. They go back there for a third time. How many players play for a team 3 times? That in of itself was wild, right? But, by the way, Dwight Howard's going to the Hall of Fame one day. Just want to remind you guys of that. 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, 5-time All-NBA first team, 8-time All-Star. But, you had to replace him, right? You had to bring in somebody else to replace Dwight. And what did you do? You brought in Andre Drummond. Andre Drummond. Andre Drummond, of all people? Listen, I get that Drummond is younger than Dwight. I get that statistically he gets more steals per game than Dwight does. But if you watch the games, Dwight Howard had a major role with this team this year. He was a guy who was basically a pseudo-enforcer. He drew attention away from the star max players like Harris, Simmons, and Embiid. He mentored the younger players. He had guys coming with him to work out after games. He would lead the younger players onto the court and say, hey, man, you want to be great? We got to work out. Him and Danny Green had a huge role for this team in terms of veteran leadership in the locker room. And you replaced him with a guy, an Andre Drummond, who has a worse field goal shooting percentage than Dwight by 10 percentage points, 47% to 56%, well, 56.5% actually. Drummond can't shoot from the outside. Both players average 3.2 fouls per game. And Howard has a better field goal shooting percentage for his career than Drummond does. So you replace Dwight Howard with a slightly lesser version of himself or a younger version of what Dwight is now? Why? And then you go out and re-sign Korkmaz last, which, listen, Korkmaz, in and of himself, the price you paid for him, 3 years, $15 million, I said to Mike Gill, it's probably a bargain bin deal. You know, the Lakers are getting a lot of guys on the cheap right now. So, you know, Korkmaz, I get that's probably what the going rate was in the league for him. But I just feel like I'm watching the Lakers collecting free agents. I mean, they've added Malik Monk. They've added Carmelo Anthony, Trevor Ariza. They brought back THT. They brought back Dwight Howard. There's reports out there that the Sixers and Danny Green are very far apart on a new contract. And it just feels like, what are the Sixers doing, man? And by the way, how about what Dwight Howard said on his way out the door? So on his Instagram account, Dwight Howard put a long message, and you can see the full message over at 973ESPN.com in the article about Andre Drummond and Dwight Howard. I posted it in the article. But at the end of the full message, he leaves for the city of Philadelphia because he thanks the city. He tells them how much he loves them and everything. He says that to the players he played with and the entire 76ers staff, we will always be family. And then he ends it with, and Ben, he says, bend your knees with 4 laughing emojis. So even on Dwight Howard's way out the door, he's throwing a little ribbon at Ben Simmons. And then this comes on the same day that Ramona Shelburne reported on The Jump today that the 76ers are probably going to be keeping Ben Simmons. Yeah. I'll read you the exact words of what Ramona Shelburne said today on The Jump on ESPN. She said, as the Sixers are open to bringing Ben Simmons back, and quote, I think they prefer that. So basically, we're just running it back. Is that what we're doing here? Just with a younger version of Dwight Howard? Is that what we're doing? I'm so hyped for Eagles season. The Phillies have won 2 games in a row. Chuck Fletcher's made about 20 transactions. I'm hyped for Flyers season. Meanwhile, the Sixers offseason has turned into just pure misery. So coming up next, we'll be joined by Kevin McCormick because I need to understand. I feel like I have zero idea what is going on with the Sixers. And hopefully Kevin McCormick can give us some answers. Coming up next, right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on the 97.3 ESPN YouTube channel and on 97.3 on Twitter. You can comment on the show. We have comments on Twitter and YouTube. You also can send a message through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks, First Bank of Seattle City. And as always, text board is open, 609-403-0973. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night.
The Eagles are back, and the Sports Bash has them covered like nobody else in South Jersey. E-A-G-L-E-S, Eagles! Listen for training camp updates every weekday at 4 p.m. during Football at 4 with Jeff Mosier, Adam Kaplan, and Andrew DeCecco. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 5:30. It's 97.3 ESPN.com Eagles insider Jeff Kerr and NFL insider Rob Motti from the Associated Press joins the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 5:30. It's the best Eagles and NFL training camp coverage around, and it's only on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Touchdown! The Eagles win! The Eagles win!
On 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's exclusive radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football.
Why would someone looking for a mortgage at the Jersey Shore take a loan from a company in Detroit or North Carolina or some other far-off place? Online mortgages promise a lot but don't always deliver. First Bank of Sea Isle City knows the Jersey Shore. We are local lenders. We use local appraisers and provide in-house processing. We understand the unique obstacles of financing in Cape May County. Don't take a chance. Local banking is better. Let us guide you. First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night, 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live as always on the 97.3 ESPN YouTube channel, as well as on Twitter. We'll get to all your messages coming up in just a bit. But joining us right now, because I need answers. And maybe I'm starting to cross the line into irrationalism when it comes to the Sixers, or maybe I'm not. So I'm hoping our guest today can at least give me some sanity checks. And that is Kevin McCormick. He joins us right now on the live stream in virtual living color. Kevin, how you doing today?
Josh, I'm doing good, and I'm glad that you volunteered me to be your voice of reason. It is a role I will take on with much pride.
So, listen, here's the problem I have. And look, while the Lakers are collecting Pokemon characters at this point, I mean, they're just they're trying to catch every free agent they possibly can at this point. While the Heat ended up with Kyle Lowry and PJ Tucker, by the way, DeMar DeRozan ended up in Chicago, and I'm still confused how that even happened. Even Doug McDermott is getting money with Nick. The
Spurs.
The Spurs. Who was the other guy? They signed the guy from Portland.
Zach Collins.
Thanks, Zach. I almost said Nick Collison, but it's Zach Collins. The point is that all these moves are happening and stuff, and the Sixers, they re-signed Korkmaz, and it's like, all right. Then 17 hours after Dwight Howard leaves, they signed Andre Drummond. And it's like, okay, you basically got a younger version of Dwight at this point. Like, you got another guy who can't shoot free throws, another guy who averages 3 fouls a game. All right. And I'm just wondering, Kevin, what is Morey doing? I don't understand what's going on. There's supposed to be Daryl Morey, the guy from Houston that was wheeling and dealing and making trades and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And it's like, and now he's just like, he's acting like Brad Stevens.
First off, that was an unnecessary jab at Brad Stevens. He just started his GM tenure. Give him some time. But I will say it has been a very uncharacteristic week from Daryl Morey, just from every sense. Even going back to draft night, Daryl Morey in Houston built this reputation of trading away first-round picks and not really taking on draft talent. And then, again, for the second year in a row, walked away with 3 draft prospects. And then, like you said, free agency hits on Monday night at 6 o'clock. All these deals are coming in a flood and a frenzy. You have Miami stacking up, Brooklyn, LA. And so far, all we've really seen from the Sixers is the Korkmaz re-signing, which I thought was rather shocking. He was a guy that I figured was going to get paid a little more money from a different team and probably wasn't going to come back to the Sixers. George Hill was waived, which clears up a little bit of cap space. But even in that was kind of a head scratcher for me. And then the Drummond thing, I'm indifferent about it. I agree that it can be looked at as the younger version of Dwight, like you just said, but I could see it being a very, solid value signing for Joel Embiid's backup for the second year in a row. And it's also like we've hit this bizarro reality where after all their years of beef on the court and trolling on social media, Andre Drummond and Joel Embiid are now teammates.
Yeah, I put that on the website, my article today, Kevin. I posted a video of him saying I feel like I own real estate. It said you got to mention that. It's part of the history of the two players. But
absolutely.
But the problem with Drummond I have is he's a worse free throw shooter than Dwight. Neither one of them shoot from the outside. They're both going to commit fouls. So it's like, all right, you get another guy who can be neutralized by a team with some stretch big men. You know what I mean? Like, that was what happened to Dwight in the playoffs. People forget that the reason why Dwight became ineffective was because you had teams like the Wizards and the Hawks that basically just took him out of his element. He could no longer be the guy in the paint to defend the rim and get the rebounds. He had to chase people around. He had to go out to the perimeter. I mean, there were times the Hawks that ran out of lamp. See, with the Wizards was Gafford, and with the Hawks with Collins, they had these athletic guys, and Drummond can't chase those guys either. Drummond's just as much of a stiff as Dwight at this point. So I just feel like it's almost like a lateral move. I think it's so unlike Daryl Morey. Daryl Morey, he's the risk taker. He's the gambler. He's the gunslinger, whatever you want to call him. And it's like, I feel like Daryl Morey was given some valerian root and some chamomile, told to take a nap, and now Elton Brand's running the team again.
I agree. The Drummond signing definitely is a lateral move. And in terms of the similarities with Dwight, Drummond still has, a little more left in the tank, 27 years old. I think he'll be a more suitable defender on the outside than Dwight might have been. I think that's something that plays a part in that. Still average over a steal a game, still average over a block per game. And at the end of the day, when looking at these deals like this, whether it be the Dwight Howard experience last year or preparing for whatever Andre Drummond's going to bring next season, when you bring them in on a veteran minimum deal, it's kind of that catch-22 of If they outplay the contract, great. It's another great pickup by Daryl Morey and, kind of winning in the margins like teams should do when they have limited cap space to work with. And then if it doesn't work, you only sign them to a minimum contract. So I feel like, the Drummond thing could go either way. And with Daryl Morey in general, it really feels like he's waiting for something else, and that something else is likely Damian Lillard. That's why he hasn't really pushed all in yet. That still feels like it's at the top of the priority list, waiting for the Olympics to finish up, for Lillard to come back to Portland, figure out that whole situation, and then the dominoes will fall from there.
All right. I was going to go there, but before I go there, I got to mention Kevin McCormick joining us, Sixers writer, 97.3 ESPN.com, and Sports Illustrated joining us here on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN. All right, look, Kevin, I like you, so I'm not going to come that crazy hard on you, all right? But I'm tired of the Damian Lillard thing. Until I hear him or Chris Haynes, who's apparently his media spokesman, come out and say Damian Lillard wants to be traded from Portland, I'm not waiting on what if, okay? It's like the guy who goes out to the bar and he stares at the girl all night. He never talks to her. He constantly waits for her to give him a sign or a wink or a wave. And then maybe he'll go over and he's been lining up that pitch for 4 hours and he goes home alone. That's what the Damian Lillard thing is. You're waiting for something that may never happen. So I can't sit here and rely on Damian Lillard maybe or maybe not coming, because guess what? While you're waiting for Damian Lillard, you could have had a chance at Kyle Lowry. You could have had a chance at other players, and you're missing out on them because you're waiting around for what might never come.
First off, you're killing it with the analogies. That was well thought out and played through. So bravo to you for that one. And with the Lowry thing, based on the reports and the way things came out after he signed, it really feels like Miami was his destination all along. And the Sixers' real chance at getting Kyle Lowry was the trade deadline last year. Once that passed, it really feels like the Sixers kind of fell out of the Lowry sweepstakes. And with waiting around for Damian Lillard, I agree. There could hit a point where, the Sixers don't look great for waiting for Damian Lillard because it never comes about. He decides to stick it out with Portland for another year. But right now, he's the best viable option in terms of upgrading your chances of competing. We're talking about Brooklyn still has their big three, Milwaukee, Miami stacked up. You need needle movers. And in terms of what was out there in the free agent pool, kind of outside of Kyle Lowry, from a fit standpoint on the Sixers, it really feels like Damian Lillard is the only needle mover. So that's why they're kind of stuck in this position of waiting to see how things play out with him.
Now, one thing we do know is Sixers did just announce that they are waiving George Hill. So explain to the audience what the significance of that is and what that might mean for them. Does that mean they can go out and get more free agents? Does that mean that they are going to have more flexibility? What kind of flexibility does that mean? Because like I said, the Lakers have collected Pokemon in the last 24 hours. I mean, you go down a list of guys they just acquired. You're just like, first of all, you forgot Malik Monk's in the league, right? Carmelo Anthony to LA has been rumored for since the day LeBron walked through the door, right? And Dwight Howard returned to the Lakers for a third time. I can't think of a player who played for a team 3 different times in their career. So like the Lakers are just in a weird situation because they had to put people around LeBron and Westbrook and Anthony Davis. So the Lakers are a weird situation. But talk to me about what this means for the Sixers. Does this mean they're pursuing maybe somebody?
It could. It does free up a little bit of cap space for them if they were to hold on to him. I believe today was the deadline to figure out what to do with him. His deal is only partially guaranteed for this season. So if he were to stay on the team past today, I believe he would have been owed $10.2 million. But now that they've decided to waive him, he's only due $1.2 million. So it gives them a little more flexibility. Maybe they have different free agent targets in mind, and that's why they decided to not hold on to George Hill.
Now, the other news that came out today, Kevin, that I know a lot of Sixer fans are not going to be happy to hear is that according to Ramona Shelburne of ESPN, the Sixers, if you basically translate what she said, was they're basically preparing for a reality where they're going to keep Ben Simmons. They're really not looking to get rid of him at this point in time. For a lot of Sixer fans, that is probably the worst news of the day. That's the only thing worse than that is like a family member dying at this point. So talk Sixer fans off the ledge right now. Explain to them why this may or may not be a bad thing.
So, well, for starters, it means that Daryl Morey is not going to just take a deal and sell Ben Simmons for pennies on the dollar. If he comes back next season, it's because a right deal never came about. Now, some might argue that Daryl Morey has gone off the edge with his trade talks, but it also, from a leverage standpoint, it feels like GM talk, to be completely honest. There's been all this chatter recently from the draft of the relationship between Ben Simmons and the Sixers parting in a sense, and that, both sides were unwilling to come about, and Ben Simmons wants out of Philadelphia. And with that, it hurts his stock, and his stock already took a big enough hit during the postseason. So I think from a leverage standpoint, that could have been thrown out there. I'm not saying that it was kind of fake chatter thrown around, but it feels like that was a move played in the sense of trying to get some leverage back to the Sixers in these trade conversations.
And listen, I can accept that because of this reason. And this is where Mike Gill and I are 100% on the same page. If you're trading Ben Simmons, you don't want Andrew Wiggins. You don't want D'Angelo Russell, all right? You don't want a guy just because he happens to score more points than Ben Simmons. Like, for me, at least, I mean, I disagree with some people. I would have been okay with maybe CJ McCollum and another player coming to Philly. I feel like there could have been a way you could have made that work. It would have made sense for the Sixers. But you don't want to trade a 3-time All-Star, a 2-time all-defensive first-team player for just somebody. So I understand that. And I do look around the league, and I realize that at the end of the day, the problem with Ben Simmons is not his scoring, per se. Because, by the way, I will never forget the Jazz game. The Jazz game when Embiid didn't play, where Ben Simmons looked at Rudy Gobert and basically gave him the bleep you eye look at one point after that one dunk. Like, Ben literally went out for 40-plus points because he wanted to. So we know Ben can score. That's never been the issue. Ben's problem is mental to me, Kevin. And I'm just concerned that if Ben comes back and he's the same Ben he's always been, that the act is just going to wear thin, and the Sixers could have maybe avoided this. But I understand at the same time, you don't want to trade Ben Simmons for nothing. So I'm really stuck in this limbo right here.
Listen, you're 100% correct. There is a very, steep catch-22 with all this Ben Simmons stuff. And Mike Gill's been kind of harboring on it for weeks now that there's a lot of Ben Simmons trades out there that make the Sixers different, but doesn't necessarily make them better. And that is the problem with trading a guy like this. Like you said, he just turned 25, multi-time All-Star, will be in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation for possibly the next decade. One of the league's top facilitators, is great in transition, has shown very nice flashes of taking that next step, and is locked up for 4 more years. You don't move on from a guy like that just for the sake of doing it and one bad playoff series. The cooler heads are going to prevail. You don't, like you said, bringing in an Andrew Wiggins or a D'Angelo Russell, that doesn't get Joel Embiid any closer to a championship. And while people may question the fit and the play style because of what happened in the playoffs, you also need to reference back to the regular season where the Sixers finished top in the Eastern Conference. So it's not like the Ben Simmons thing doesn't work. It only has to be, adjusted for the sense of an upgrade. It's not, he doesn't have a bad contract. He isn't a washed player. So he has to be dealt in a move that is going to make the Sixers better. Because, if you get in this rabbit hole of flipping him just for assets just to get it done, then we could be talking about, wasting the asset of Ben Simmons where he could have got you an all-star level caliber player, and you jump the gun by trading him for Andrew Wiggins and draft picks.
Kevin McCormick joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at Kevin MCC NBA on Twitter, Sixers beat writer for 97.3 ESPN.com and Sports Illustrated. Now, do we read anything? And I say this a little tongue-in-cheek, but, I'm a big believer that in sarcasm there is truth, okay? Dwight Howard, in his farewell post to everybody, he talks about how he loves Philadelphia, that the players he played with and the staff that always be family. At the very end, he says, and Ben ya knees. He has 4 laughing emojis after it. So in Dwight's mind, he's having a little fun with Ben Simmons. But is there maybe something to read into that? Is there maybe something to say, maybe people were trying to help Ben, but Ben just couldn't absorb the help that was being given to him?
I don't know. I think you're looking into it a little too much. All throughout the regular season, when Dwight Howard would jump into Zoom calls, the Ben Janice thing is something that he started in reference to himself during his own free throw struggles. So while it may look like a possible jab on the outside, it feels like it was more of an inside joke. Dwight just being Dwight. Because if you look back all through the regular season, Dwight Howard was one of the biggest public advocates of Ben, whether it be on social media, Zoom calls, whenever he could. He was someone that was always in his corner, wanted what was best for him, and could have been one of the guys that he tried to take under his wing and help take that next step, which is the benefit of bringing in a veteran like him. So while I agree the optics of it may not look great, especially after how things went down in the postseason, but I feel like it was more of a playful nature, and there was no kind of malicious intent from it.
So, all right, so let's extrapolate that. So if it is a playful thing, okay, it's Dwight just being Dwight, we know how Dwight can be. He is that kind of personality. Is there something to be said for the fact that losing him might actually be bigger than we're realizing? Because to me, I felt like he brought leadership to this team, him and Danny Green. And now there's a report out there that Danny Green and Sixers have this big gap between them and a deal. If Dwight's going to leave, he's somebody who, he was a bit lighthearted. Maybe he lightened up the room sometimes. Maybe he broke the tension in the room at times. He was a guy I felt was like a pseudo enforcer. He drew attention to himself, take it away from Ben and Tobias and Joel. And now you lose that guy. There's a part of me that wonders, if you lose Dwight and you maybe lose Danny Green, the two of them could be a huge loss people don't realize.
Absolutely. If the Sixers lose Danny Green, it will be a very huge blow that might not seem it at first, but 2-3 months into the season, we'll be talking about, how valuable Danny Green was. Just from the sense of a glue guy standpoint, everybody loved him. He was so well spoken. He's been around the block. He'd won with San Antonio, he won with Toronto, was fresh off that Lakers. When you have young superstars who haven't done it before, the best kind of guys to put around them are guys who have been there before. I said it all year. I think Danny Green was the unsung hero of the starting lineup. I think you saw his impact on the floor when he got injured during the playoffs and wasn't able to play during that Atlanta series. And I think the same thing with Dwight. All through the year, a lot of the younger players talked about how great Dwight was behind the scene and taking them under his wing and kind of, he helped show them the ropes of the NBA life. And I agree, if they're both gone and you're losing your two, veteran guys in the locker room who have won championships, that most certainly affects a locker room dynamic.
Do we have any good news to the Sixers right now? Is there anything positive we can talk about Philadelphia right now, aside from Matisse Thybulle playing for Australia?
There's been some chatter. I believe Keith Pompey just tweeted about it as well, that Gorgeous Niang from Utah is potentially linked to the Sixers now. It could be, a Mike Scott replacement. Isn't a flashy name to say the least, but fills a role, adds more shooting to that second unit. And as sad as it sounds, it feels like we're going to have to play the waiting game in terms of free agency and how the rest of the things play out. So things might not look great now, but I think Daryl Morey is far from done before we hit the start of next season. So there's positivity in the future, I would say.
So you're preaching patience.
Absolutely. I believe the words were trust the process for years. I don't know. I forget.
Yes, it was trust the process. But depending on who you ask, that might be duplicitous with a 4 letter word. So, listen, I'm just saying, in a city where Eagles training camp is back and we're getting excited for Eagles and football. Kevin, this is the first week. Until middle of February, there will be a football game of NFL or college football every single week. All right. I'm excited. All right. The Phillies won 2 games in a row. I'm semi-excited. Chuck Fletcher's made 20 trades. I'm actually getting interested in Flyers hockey again. Right. And then the Sixers give me Korkmaz and Drummond. And I'm just like, come on, guys. You're spoiling the mood here.
I could agree to that, but the one thing I will say, listen, you said all that about Daryl Morey at the top of how quick he can make a roster turn, and listen, we saw it on draft night last year as well, how fast in the blink of an eye Daryl Morey completely revamped the Sixers starting lineup. So while things may not look great now and they look quiet and slow, a week from now things could be drastically different. Daryl Morey has never been known to sit on his hands. I don't think he's sitting on his hands now. Things are in the works behind the scenes. So while things may, like I said, they may look bleak now, but there is positivity in the future. I don't believe Daryl Morey is simply just going to run things back with kind of just plug-and-play players.
All right, before I let you go, every week I post a top 10 Thursday. People can check it out over at 97.3 ESPN.com. The latest one was on greatest players drafted by the Sixers. So they had to have been drafted by the team and have played at some point in Philadelphia. So, Kevin, I asked you to run it back, look at the list. I want to know your thoughts on the top 10 list.
I liked it. I think it was pretty accurate. The one thing I will say, I think Ben Simmons deserves an honorable mention in there. Listen, it may not sound great right now, but an honorable mention. I'm not saying he belongs in the top 10. Other than that, I enjoyed the list. I'd maybe put Iverson 1 just for the sheer fact of his ability to put the team on his back and get them to the finals in 01. I think that should, garner him that number 1 spot. But I also don't hate the idea of putting Charles Barkley 1 because at the end of the day, he still is one of the best big men in NBA history.
I think Charles Barkley is arguably the most underappreciated player in NBA history. I don't think people appreciate how great he was at an elite level. Like the fact that he was his height and did what he did as a power forward, to me, will never be talked about enough. And that's just my opinion. I feel like if he would have won a title, we would be talking about Barkley, the top 20 player of all time. But because he never won a ring and he lost to Jordan like half the league did, we kind of put those people in a different category. You know what I mean? It's like, if you don't win a ring, we treat you differently. And it's with Iverson. If Iverson would have beat Shaq and Kobe if he would have gone 6-7 games with Shaq and Kobe, I think Iverson's career would be looking differently as well. So to me, it's hard for me to differentiate, except the only differentiation I have is that I just feel like Chuck was greater longer. You know what I mean? It's the 5 All-NBA first teams versus the 3 for Iverson. It's the fact that they both won MVP awards. They both were high first-round picks. They both led teams to the finals. But Chuck did things in his career that will probably never be done again, honestly.
The only rebuttal I'd say to that is I feel like Iverson could garner that number 1 spot just because while his resume not be as deep as Charles, he did all that stuff here. So when you're talking about players drafted by the franchise and in terms of top 10 stuff, I feel like what they did for the franchise that drafted them should play a role as well.
Yeah, I know. I got the same criticism for my Flyers list. People, because they put Peter Forsberg on the list for me. I said greatest player drafted, not greatest player just to wear a uniform. And Forsberg and Barkley did wear the uniform. So it's like, I can't discount their careers. They're so Hall of Famers. So, but I understand where you're coming from. And listen, maybe when we come back next year and do another list and we'll run it back and we'll look at where Ben Simmons is in a year from now, maybe you can make the list then. It's an honorable mention.
Listen, I feel like he deserves it now, but I will agree to that.
All right, Kevin McCormick, Kevin MCC NBA on Twitter. Give him a follow for all your Sixers and NBA coverage. Check out his work over at 97.3 ESPN.com and over on SI. And he joined us here on the web stream. Kevin, I appreciate the conversation. Enjoy the rest of the week. And you guess what? Sports.
Yeah, sports. Listen, you need to cheer up, too. You sound all doom and gloom right now. You used the word misery before I came on. It's only Tuesday. You got to cheer up, Josh. Got to cheer up.
Listen, man, it's just misery with the Sixers. I'm cool on the other 3 teams right now, all right?
All right, well, hopefully Daryl Morey can change your emotions.
Although I'm not thrilled that Hoskins is batting second tonight, so.
I love every second of it.
Hoskins needs to be like the 5 hitter to me.
No,
He's the 5-6 hitter.
I hope he homers tonight.
He probably will.
He definitely will.
Kevin, talk to you later.
All right, talk to you later, Josh.
Kevin McCormick joined us here on 97.3 ESPN. All right. We got to get a lot of messages to get to. We'll get to them next here on Game Night, 97.3 ESPN FM. The 97.3 ESPN mobile app, it's free. Thanks First Bank of Seattle City. We are live on YouTube and Twitter as well as Facebook. Appreciate you guys joining the show, watching the show. We get to all your messages on all the platforms next. 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks First Bank of Seattle City. Text board 609-403-0973. And, of course, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. all the messages. They're coming in. We'll get to you guys next. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night.
South Jersey's sports station, 97.3 ESPN. Wake up weekday mornings 6 to 10 with Keyshawn, Jay, Will, and Zubin. Followed by Greeny with Mike Greenberg from 10 till noon. At noon, it's Bard and Hahn. Then from 2 to 6 p.m., it's South Jersey's #1 rated sports talk show, The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. And from 6 to 7, Josh Hennig hosts Game Night. Plus, 97.3 ESPN is your exclusive play-by-play home for Philadelphia Eagles, Sixers, and Flyers, the NBA playoffs and finals, Major League Baseball, and the World Series, the NFL Draft, Monday, Thursday, and Sunday Night Football, the NFL playoffs, and Super Bowl 56. We are South Jersey's sports leader. 97.3 ESPN. And listen anywhere with the free mobile app.
Good morning, Province!
15 cents, and comp books 20. Why would someone looking for a mortgage at the Jersey Shore take a loan from a company in Detroit or North Carolina or some other far-off place? Online mortgages promise a lot but don't always deliver. First Bank of Sea Isle City knows the Jersey Shore. We are local lenders. We use local appraisers and provide in-house processing. We understand the unique obstacles of financing in Cape May County. Don't take a chance. Local banking is better. Let us guide you. First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here. Call segment of the show, 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on YouTube and Twitter on 973 ESPN as well on Facebook. Glad to have you all on board the show today. We always wrap up with your thoughts and comments each and every show. Text board 609-403-0973. Also, messages coming in through the 973 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks, First Bank of Seattle City. Of course, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. A couple messages came in throughout the show. Get to them in the order they came in. Message came in a little bit earlier. Says Josh that the NFC East comes down to injuries. A little more bullish on the Eagles. If they stay healthy, I think they win at least 9 games. They're a 9-win team. Listen, I won't argue they're a 9-win team. I feel like this for me, I just go 7-8 wins because of this reason. They won 4 games last year. And I'm a big believer that when I went back and rewatched the Eagles season, that there were 3 games that Carson Wentz lost himself. He lost you 3 games single-handedly because of his turnover issues. So if you get rid of Carson Wentz leading the league in interceptions and holding the ball for 4 or 5 seconds and all the mess that he was last year, you win 3 more games. And then I think the additions of Harris, Nelson, and Wilson on defense and the change of coordinator get you another win on top of that. So 3 plus 4 is 7, plus 1 is 8. So that's how I go to 7-8 wins. But if you want to tell me they can win 9 games, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. I don't see it right now, but I won't be shocked if it happens. Dan EHC chimes in, sends a message in and says, the upside is that Ben Simmons can't be any worse than last postseason. Yes, Dan. The upside is that Ben Simmons can't be any worse. And I appreciate that. Yes. He can't be worse, but I expect more of him. I expect better of him. And when it comes to athletes, I'm a person who believes there's 2 kinds of athletes. There's the athlete who loves what the game does for their bank account, and there's the athlete who loves the game and just wants to win. And I think Ben is the former and not the latter. I don't know if Ben is ultimately the ultimate competitor who wants to win at all costs. There's a part of me that thinks that because he lived a cushy life, because he was handed a lot of things in life, he was crowned the next guy, the next up-and-coming star. You know, he doesn't have that it factor in him that makes him want more out of life, that makes him so hyper competitive and so hyper elite that he's willing to do whatever it takes to be great. And until I see that come out of him, I just can't believe in him more than just what he is right now. A lot of guys can be all-stars in this league. There's a lot of guys who are all-stars. I just don't know if they'll ever be more than that. On YouTube, Uzi Wolf chimes in and says, I've been Team Howie Roseman most of this time. I can't deny he's a top 5 GM in my book. He absolutely has made mistakes, but I'm glad he's here. Listen, Uzi Wolf, even if Howie Roseman was not a top 5 GM, let's say he was top 10, let's say he's top 12, that's still the upper half group of the league. And I think that what problem with Howie is that people just don't like him. People want to blame him for things that may or may not be his fault. All right. Has he made specific mistakes? Yes, when it comes to, especially if it comes to the draft. But there's a part of me that wonders, now that Doug Peterson isn't here, Howie Roseman made the comment that I want to see, is what Howie said. He said, I want to see what happens with the players we drafted with this new coaching staff. So that tells me that Howie and the people in the front office, like Andy Weidel and the other scouts, believe that Doug Peterson maybe was not the best developer of talent. That they believe that maybe they can do better, and maybe that Sirianni can get more out of the young players. One more message. Jeff Bonampuki says, if Barkley was in his prime in today's league, he'd win a ring. I think you're right, because part of the problem for Barkley was he was getting knocked around and punched in the face and thrown all over the place. You can't touch anybody in today's league. Barkley would have open rebounds and open dunks for days. All right, thanks again, McCormick, for joining the show. I'm Josh Hennig. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Hennig. This is Game Night. I'll catch you tomorrow.
This is Billy Schwein. Join us Friday night for 97.3 ESPN's live coverage of the 75th annual Margate Memorial Lifeguard Races live from the beach in Margate. Coverage starts at 6 p.m.
The Margate Memorial Lifeguard Races are being brought to you by a McCann Realtor serving Seattle City since 1939. Dino's Subs and Pizza on Bender Ave in Margate. Lee's Builders of Margate, over 30 years of building custom homes. Blitz's Markets with 2 locations in Ocean City at 21st and 34th Streets. 7th and 11th Streets Bike and Surrey Rentals at the Boardwalk in Ocean City.